Constructing arguments a primer. Objective. You will develop a baseline understanding of how we're going to use the term argument to make sure your response to the foundational writing assignment you complete during Unit 1 are technically correct and usable for future graded assignments. So of course, the core concept in this lesson is named by the word arguments, and another kind of important concept, kind of a contextual important concept, is the word primer. So this is just teaching you some really crucial basics when it comes to arguments, and the focus is on what do you need to know in order to create good responses in the form of arguments when you complete another graded activity that counts for, I think, 10 or 12% of your grade. So I'm going to teach you or make sure that you know how we are going to be using some words and some concepts to make sure that when you complete a project or an assignment that is rather significant towards your grade and needs to be usable for the future, that's as much as I'm going to share with you right now, but we will build on this during an in-class session. All right. So remember, if I write something down, you write something down, whether it's here or over here, or if I tell you to write something down, then you also write it down, even if I don't write it down. And remember that if I make any kind of marking, that you should also make some markings. Just keep in mind, just to help you understand why I do that, is because I have been teaching for a while, and there are certain things that, if not written down or copied, students tend to forget or make mistakes with respect to those things that they didn't write down or copy. So I'm really just trying to help you out here. Keep in mind that you will be graded for your notes being clear, accurate, precise, and sufficient. So let's go ahead and start the lesson. All right, so we're going to first start by defining statement. And the definition is a declarative sentence that asserts something is actual or probable. It makes a claim about something. So some key words within our definition include these two together: a declarative sentence, asserts something is actual or probable. So you should be doing these triangles with underline. Notice, like another little explanation, it makes a claim about something. I want you to add to this in small letters. We're trying to stay at the top half of this triangle, so write small. Can be classified as, in fact, we want to say we can be classified at, try to keep your writing for this part, try to keep your writing for that, like at the edge of this text lines here, try to keep your writing in this space. Can be classified at least in theory as true or false. Okay, so an example of a statement, and of course you know where we put our examples. Again, write small. Example 1, Dr. C is my professor. Okay. Or you could say Dr. C is one of my professors. Dr. C is my philosophy professor. Dr. C is one of my Mountain View professors. Example 2, Dr. C is everyone's favorite professor. Example 3, if Dr. C teaches philosophy, try to keep some space, about a line of space, half an inch or a centimeter above this line right here for note taking. So this is if. I know it looks like if. If Dr. C teaches philosophy, comma, then she must be qualified to teach the subject. So just remember that because this is a video, that if you need to, you can pause the video and rewind to make sure you captured what I said. And that's the really cool thing about Flipped Learning, is that when I do videos, you can listen to me and make me repeat myself as many times as you need. All right, so Dr. C is my professor, so this is making assertion about reality, right? It's declaring that something is the case about reality, that something in some state of affairs is actual or true, or at least probable. Dr. C is everyone's favorite professor. Some of you might be saying, hey, that's just subjective, that's just preference, that's just an opinion. Well, that might be the case, but even our opinions or subjective, claims, ideas, or whatnot are still, most of the time, expressed in the form of a statement as we're defining the word statement. This one, and I had to get rid of that pen because I couldn't write clearly with it. If Dr. C teaches philosophy, comma, then she must be qualified to teach the subject. A lot of people think that this is two statements, and insofar as we're going to be thinking about statements that have what we call the if-then format, or any version of it, we're going to count it as one statement. It's hypothetical. The if part, like this, if Dr. C teaches philosophy, that's an incomplete thought with the word if, right? So that in and of itself is not a statement. And then, because it's a sentence, right? A declarative sentence. This would be a sentence fragment, just like that. If it was just, if Dr. C teaches philosophy, that's a sentence fragment. And what do we know about statements? They are declarative sentences. So there are not two statements here. This is just one statement. It's a hypothetical. All right, so let's add some notes and write very small. Try to stay at the top 2/3 of this side if you can. So as sentences, as a sentence, okay, well, I have to be careful. Actually, let's add this. Okay, so a complete thought, okay, complete thought, definition, rules out sentences that are sentence fragments. Questions or non-moral commands. I'm going to have to explain why I had to say non-moral commands, but for now, just really think commands. So sentence fragments aren't even complete thoughts, right? Questions are designed to elicit information, to get information about reality. They don't make claims or assert anything. And then commands direct behavior. So these are different forms of communication, different expressions designed to do different things. That is at least the commands and the questions. All right, so then a note about this one right here. And actually, we're going to leave a space. So leave a space right here for about 3 lines and then come down here. So I want to say a special something about this one right here. So we want to say that example 3 is called a conditional statement. Standard form is if X, then Y An AKA means also known as a hypothetical. It looks like I'm not going to be able to save space, but now that I'm thinking about what I want to write down, it's okay. So let's just keep going. And actually, I would have bulleted this, but I was trying to save space. This is one statement, not two. Okay, so depending on the needs of the class, I might say something more about that. I'm sorry if it freezes up or it's a little bit blurry. I'm just now noticing that. But you can always pause the video and write. I haven't told you to write anything down that I haven't written down. And since I just looked up at my screen and saw that there was a little bit of blurriness, I'm not going to tell you to write something down that I have not written down, just in case that continues. All right. So now I want to go down to the definition for how we will be using argument in this class. A set of statements, or at least one statement, a reason, is given in support of another statement, a conclusion. So here you see a set of statements, and probably now understand why I first defined statement, because you can see that the very first criterion, element, right, requirement for something to count as an argument is that it consists of statements. And what I want you to say here is and only statements. Okay, so technically speaking, technically correct arguments, when you're constructing them, will have only statements. So sometimes people use questions in a rhetorical sense to imply what they mean, but I'm not going to want you to do that. I want you to be direct and assert whatever it is that you want to assert about whatever argument for whatever topic that I'm having you discuss. Then you see that there's at least one. What does at least one mean? There could be more than one. There could be more. So statements, and only statements, and then we're at least one. There could be more, as at least one says. And again, you see the word what? Statement, statement, a reason, right? So it's saying there must be at least one reason, but there could be multiple reasons in the form of statements, is given to support another statement, a conclusion. Okay? And I'm going to talk more about number of conclusions and whatnot. So it's, like I said, this is a primer. It's giving you just the basics. There's a lot more complexity and nuance to arguments, but this is just enough to get us started on where we need to go for argument construction. All right, so another thing that I want to add then is that continuing, in fact, we're going to go up here, okay? So do you see where it says reason? Do I want to put it down here? Okay. Yeah, no, actually, I thought we would put something up here, but now I'm thinking we won't. So I could have had this up here, but let's not worry about that. So let's write some important points, okay? So there can be, for emphasis, any number of statements but the following must apply. Okay, so we're going to create a kind of checklist based on the argument, right? Does the passage have at least, in fact, let's not ask a question, let's just say the passage has at least two statements, and of course we're using the word statements as defined above. Next on our checklist. So that's a requirement. It's necessary, but it's not enough. It's not sufficient for something to count as an argument. Next, at least one statement is trying to support another. Okay. When it comes to the word support, let's write a little note over here. So some synonyms for support, and it really just depends in terms of what word you use to talk about what is supporting what. Will sometimes depend on what kind of an argument you're talking about or how you're talking about an argument. But some other words that you could use are justify, warrant, oh, I'm not done yet, advance. So earlier when I said your notes should be clear or neat, this is my standard right here. So I've just gotten some notes that they're all over the place. The writing is all over the place. So yeah, you can have some cross outs and some stuff like this. This is perfectly acceptable. All right. So just remember that these are what synonyms. This should have a T. Justify, warrant, and advance are synonyms that one can use when it comes to support. Okay. And what part of the statement does this kind of thing? Supporting, justifying, advancing, and warranting. The statement that is called a reason, okay? So that's where we're getting to here in our checklist. At least one statement is trying to support another. And then, of course, while it's entailed here, just to make sure, a statement is okay, so at least one statement is trying. You could also say attempting to support another. A statement is the focus, I like that word right here, the focus of at least one other statement. Statements attempt to justify, warrant, support it. Okay. So a statement is the focus of at least one other statements, that's a possessive, attempt to justify, warrant, support it. Okay. So let's go ahead and go to our example. Children are not learning social skills when having to just sit and do work in front of a computer at home. So we're going to be, when we're learning about arguments and we're, making sure that we understand what an argument is, we're going to be marking them up. You will not do this when you do your argument constructions for a grade, but this is a statement right here. So children are not learning social skills when having to just sit and do work in front of a computer. We're going to also have this habit. So that's statement one. So go ahead and put your brackets where I've put my brackets, and then put the number 1 inside a circle. And then we've got another statement right here. Therefore, we should reopen elementary schools. So this will be statement 2. Now this argument actually has what we call a conclusion indicator. It has a word that says, hey man, here comes a conclusion. Can you find that word? The word is therefore. So therefore tells us a conclusion is coming. So we're going to label this conclusion. So just at the beginning of the sentence, don't put it in the middle, don't put it at the end, put it either over here by therefore or immediately after the word therefore and above the statement that is functioning as a conclusion. So if this is an argument, right, and it has only 2 statements, then by process of elimination, we know that the other statement must be a what? Reason. Children are not, okay, so this is being given a reason to what? Justify this. This statement is trying to support this conclusion. Statement 1 is trying to advance in a logical way statement 2, the truth or plausibility. Now we can go on and debate whether we should reopen elementary schools, right? That might not be absolutely definitive. The debate can be ongoing, but again, going back to our definition for statement, a statement can at least in theory be classified as true or false. We can at least argue about it being true or false, whereas we cannot do that with questions and commands, and I'll demonstrate that again in class. I think I demonstrated it to one section already, but nevertheless, I will demonstrate what I just said again. All right, so these are the basic concepts, the basic points that I want you to know, and we're going to be building on this in class and throughout the coming days.